So with that, let's jump into introductions. My name is Michael Blodgett, and I'm the Director of Demand Generation here at OneDay. I've been on the OneDay team for about 2 years now, and I'm super grateful to be part of the senior living industry. Prior to working at OneDay, I worked at several high growth startups, both in the multifamily space and in the legal consulting space. So I'm so honored to be joined here by Bella Groves CEO and co-founder, James Lee. James, I had to say, our first webinar, you have that awesome microphone to set up. So I had to get a little nicer microphone for this one. Still not as cool as yours, but I'm gonna go pass the mic to you to introduce yourself and kind of set the stage for our topic today.
Love it. Thanks, Michael. I'm always happy to have these conversations, and in particular, happy to be doing this with Michael and with the team at OneDay. What I always appreciate about invitations from OneDay is that they're really interested in going into the nooks and crannies and corners of topics that I think deserve light and discussion. So I'm always all over these type of invitations. I'm James Lee. I live here in San Antonio. I started in the senior care industry almost 15 years ago as a caregiver and have had a number of roles in traditional senior living across the entire spectrum of services, from independent living to skilled nursing and everything in between. So as of about a year and a half ago, I've been able to strike out on my own, left kind of big box senior living, still love big box senior living. But as the nature of this particular conversation is going to reveal, I have had a lot of aha moments coming from kind of the big boys on the block to the smallest of the small businesses in the space. And frankly, I'm excited about the opportunities that we have as a small business for Bella Groves, and as just a private consultant. And so that's kind of what we're going to talk about: how to embrace the things that we often feel are disadvantages to businesses like ours, small business, and how I actually think that those are advantages. And those advantages don't have to be limited to your size and scope. It really is a mindset. So hopefully we'll get to explore some of that today, share some good tips, and also hear from you if you are a small business owner, or even a kind of a regional player. Would love to hear your thoughts as well while we go through this.
For sure. So we're going to try to pack in as much as we can in the next
Let's
half hour. Whether you're here and you're one of the top 150 senior living providers or an individual community, we all share the common ground that we all have a customer to serve. So like James said, this morning, we'll be walking through 4 key strategies or mindsets that all blend together to really fuel this concept of thinking like a small business and embracing the opportunity to be agile in senior living. So fun fact, this topic kind of came up in a conversation James and I had nearly a year ago. So we're really hyped to jump in today, and I'm going to kick it off now. So little backstory: my first job, other than mowing lawns in my neighborhood, was opening up one of the first In-N-Out burger locations in Dallas, Texas, when I was 16 years old. And so when we went through our whole training boot camp, the theme that was repeated again and again was the mantra that the customer is always right. So now, this wasn't always the case in my 4 years working there, but even when I knew that the customer was wrong, I had to hold true to that mantra. So let me be clear: the customer in senior living has a much more complicated journey map than folks coming by buying double doubles and milkshakes. But the concept that what matters to your customer, in your case, your residents. So the concept that what matters to your customer should be first and foremost in every action that you take. So that leads us to our first hot take, our first mindset that we're going to chat through. So which is, you've got to put yourself in your residents' shoes every day. And here's the big part: be resident obsessed versus process obsessed. So what does that mean? I'm confident that no matter what your role is, it's pretty easy to obsess over your internal processes and how you want to handle the journey of your resident from inquiry to beyond move-in. So the question we should be asking is this: how can I best serve my resident? And here's one way you can start. You don't have to scrap your process map or your internal processes completely, but instead focus on your customer journey map. So a process map that probably takes your community's perspective, describes your internal processes using terms, jargon, or endless acronyms that are specific to your community. But by contrast, the customer journey map takes the potential resident's perspective or your current resident's perspective, and it really describes the experience using their own language. So in other words, the process map is starting inward and looking outward of your community. Meanwhile, the customer journey map you have should be starting outward and looking inward at your community. So When you're building this customer journey map, it's important to not just, I know it's easy to just have the sales team work on it since they're the ones trying to drive move-ins, but it should involve all groups that are involved in the resident experience in entirety, not one individual or department. And honestly, each community will likely have their own unique journey, and each resident will have their own journey. So let's be honest, one all-encompassing customer journey map you put together shouldn't be a one-size-all-fit solution. So I'm going to pass it over to James to kind of continue along the thought process on how he's having that mindset at Bella Groves.
Yeah, so Bella Groves, real quick, we are a dementia education business that happens to have a dementia care residence. So we just opened 3 weeks ago with our first 3 residents. So hooray for that. So we're utilizing our 32-bed dementia care community as really a working showroom of all of our dementia knowledge. And so the other services we're going to put out in the community are dementia education through online learning, at-home consultation to help people manage their care of their loved one at home. So we've got a lot of pieces of what we're doing. What we don't have is a lot of money. We don't have a ton of marketing budget. We don't have established processes. It is a huge ordeal trying to come up with all of the things that I've gotten used to having from traditional senior living, process upon process and checklist upon checklist. And it dawned on me as we were going through the opening days of Bella Groves, the opening year of Bella Groves, that in the absence of a ton of processes, there is an advantage in that you can focus on your customers, their journey, and what matters to them. And so I often talk about that our industry is very solutions obsessed. We talk about our solutions, there's sales training upon sales training about how to talk about your solutions, but I want to be problems obsessed and not our problems, our customers' problems. So as a small business, we really embrace that idea that let's care about the problems that our customers care about. And that requires different behaviors and habits from us. When you are process obsessed, like Michael teed up for us, all you're worried about is working through your business's established processes. And you probably have weekly meetings, monthly reports, and measurement upon measurement to let you know if you're doing your process well. But I want you to think about how often you talk about your customers' problems, how often you talk about their customer journey map. Are you surveying your customers frequently? Do you really know what they're concerned about? We almost act, Michael, as if we don't have a solution in mind, and we just talk to customers and ask them questions about what are you experiencing, right? And then if it happens that we have some solutions that kind of line up with it, great. But if not, we've also gotten a lot of value in learning. I'm going to give a very, very specific example just to help illustrate the point. One of our customers talked to us about managing care for their mom at home, and she had a question about what do I do with mom's adult briefs after we've helped change her? And it had dawned on me that we never think about this in senior living. We never really worry about that issue. But when I was talking with this customer, she was on a Facebook group and they had a huge thread about this very specific problem about what do we do? How do we do this in a dignified way?
Mhm.
And that to me, if we were process obsessed, we would miss this nuance of what families care about. And so when you ask questions and you really pay attention to what's going on, you get insights into customers and you have a better chance of meeting their needs as a result. If we were a large business, that would have been missed. But because we're a small business, it's something we were able to focus on.
Nice. I love that, James. Thanks for sharing that story. Well, I'm going to jump over to strategy number 2 here, and that is to get local. Make your prospect and resident experience as personalized as possible. So, James, I'm going to let you kick off this one.
Yeah, I think when you think locally, look, I'm in San Antonio. I was an executive director of a community here, and some various corporate roles. So I've seen my community of San Antonio from the perspective of the big bucks, and then the perspective that we have today. The truth is when you are a community, and you have a lot of processes established, you really have a limited view of how to get out to the community. And if we're being honest, we usually get out to the community from a business development perspective, like, okay, we got to go out and talk about, what we do. But if we care about what our customers care about, by extension, we need to care about what our community cares about. what are the issues going around the community, and is there a place for us to kind of tap into that? So one of the ways we're able to do that is we've gotten a lot of traction with hosting these dementia support groups in the local community. So one of the most popular places is the local library here in our small town. And so people are starting to come to that, and we're serving the community because it's already an established need. We're not selling our product. We are a subject matter expert that fills a community need. And so it's also opened up all of these little branches into other things that Bulverde, Texas cares about. And so I think when you care about what your community cares about, you really start to serve your community rather than thinking about it as business development. Do you know what I mean, Michael?
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
So shifting that perspective of, okay, I got to do business development once a week, to shifting it to, I get to participate in my community's needs once a week. That simple mind shift, I think, actually matters a lot. And we're getting referrals from people that have never even spoken to us because they see us at these community functions and they can see genuinely that we care about the same things.
That's really impactful, James. And I'm thinking that's even a long-term, I mean, it is truly business development, because someone may not be ready to move in next week or next month, but if you're able to get ahead of it and have your name spread on the community, they'll, when they're ready to move, they'll think of y'all instantly and think, hey, these folks really care about giving people dementia care and really giving them a dignified experience. So that's and it truly is business development, but it doesn't feel salesy. So I love that example.
It happens to produce the result of business development, but the intention is very different. The intention is what matters to our greater community, and can it matter to us in the same way? And when you have that alignment, it happens to have the result of business development, which is great.
For sure. I think one other point that we wanted to talk through here is sometimes it's hard when you're a larger scale organization to follow, or it's harder to not think locally and instead maybe follow corporate initiatives that may be too general.
Totally.
So, I found one article that I really love from OneDay partner Brightview Senior Living, where it encourages communities to not just give back and have charity and things like that in the community, but also to help their residents explore local culture and engage the residents and personalize their journey. So this reminds me of a story that I heard at our Genum a couple of weeks ago. There was an ED who was being honored, and she gave a speech, and she said there's one of her residents who just loved eating oysters, but based on the I guess what the guidelines of what they could serve at the community, they couldn't serve raw seafood. So once a month she would take him off site to eat at his favorite seafood place, and he, as a result of that, he became one of the biggest advocates in the community. He would often pop in on tours and just share how his experience has been at the community. So obviously that wasn't the intended result of her going out of her way to think local and personalize with that individual resident, but that was what the result of it. So connecting with other residents on whether it's an excursion or just taking them out to enjoy the local community, that's another way to help them just build lasting friendships and based on common interests, experiences, and really helps them be stimulated mentally and enjoy that social engagement of being on an offsite trip. So James, anything else you wanted to cover on this topic?
I love that story, Michael. And what I draw from it is that that ED helped that resident to stay engaged with the local business. And so think about that restaurant would have otherwise missed that customer had we not intervened in making that connection. And I think that's what think local really means. If you help members of the community to stay connected with other members of the community and you're the bridge for that, now you add value to your community. So unfortunately, senior living has in part created this narrative that senior living is the end of the road. Okay, live your life out here in your community and then come to us and we'll package everything for you here. But we should really be thinking of our facilities and communities as the hub or the bridge to connect people back to their community. We're solving isolation through being a bridge, not by giving them a place to live and eat all their food and socialize. So be a bridge rather than a final destination.
That's awesome. Love that, James. Well, we're gonna hop to my personal favorite. Our third strategy is to think like a scrappy startup. How to do a lot with the little in
Right.
your sales and marketing efforts. So this is one that rings true for me every day. But oftentimes when resources are slim, you have to do a lot with a little. So how can you really amplify your efforts without spreading yourself too thin? It's that difficult balance. So here are a few tips I've gathered from about 8 years of working at fast-paced, high-growth startups. The first one is to relentlessly repurpose content. So here's how that can look in the startup world. So for example, this webinar that we're on, this half-hour webinar, once we're done with it, we have a recording. We can transcript it and turn it into an ebook. That could be 3 or 4 pages long. And then what if we have 3 or 4 pages there? We can easily chop that into 2 or 3 blog posts. And then we were just talking about text here. What about the actual 30 minutes of footage? We can look back at it and chop it into several clips that can be used on social media, maybe even some LinkedIn ads. And then even just taking the transcript and the videos and turning those into social posts. There might be some quotable moments, more likely from James here than me, but that
Oh,
could
yeah,
be
right.
put on a graphic and shared on social media. So the overall goal when it comes to keeping yourself from being spread too thin, but also maximizing your time is repurposing your content and your efforts. So that's one thing that I like to do a lot. I could do a way better job at it, but if you see clips of this webinar over the next few weeks on LinkedIn, we're just trying to practice what we preach.
Yeah.
But how can that look like in one of your communities? So, for example, do you have a virtual tour or a tour of your community that you just love to use and maybe drive some conversions? Think of how you can personalize it by maybe adding a personalized intro and outro to it when you send it to potential residents. So that way, if you're really short on time, you don't have to walk across the whole building every time, but you can still keep it personalized to that potential resident. Or have you maybe received a lot of the same questions over and over again from whether it's prospects or current residents? Why not record like a frequently asked questions video to answer those questions? And you can even transcript those and turn them into a blog post on your website to show that I'm sure a lot of the folks on your website have a lot of those questions in mind. And if you readily have answers, whether it's text or video, that's a great way to really stay ahead of it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, James, any thoughts on that?
Really, really good examples, Michael. I can tell you, with Bella Groves, content marketing is a huge, huge part of our strategy. First of all, content marketing is slow and steady, but sustainable, and advertisements are quick and effective, but they have a very, very short half-life.
Mhm.
And they're expensive. Ads are expensive. So we are fully kind of embracing that idea that content is evergreen. So the amount of time you invest in it just multiplies over time. And to Michael's point, you can repurpose a lot of it over and over. My kind of advice here when it comes to content marketing is to be instructive. It has to be a how-to, a helpful guide. Customers will very quickly scan through your content and see if this is meant to sell them something.
For
But
sure.
but forget all that, serve their needs. And if you're really paying attention to what they care about, what problems do they have, what does the community care about, and your content answers those things, you're gonna win in the long run. So focus on your content. And the other piece of this that I would say, as a scrappy young startup here in our own right, we have to let other people on the team contribute in these kind of ways.
Mhm.
So I know that there's a feeling sometimes that your blog or your video or something has to be perfect, polished, and like YouTube ready. But the truth is, I would rather have 80% in terms of like the professional quality, but it conveys authenticity,
Mhm.
a genuine thought from our caregiver versus a fully polished, video from your owner, I think
Mhm.
goes a long way. So I think there's a little too much hesitation and guardrails in larger senior living who wants to control their brand. I understand where that comes from, but you're also cutting out a lot of good value where people can contribute to it, and just loosen the guardrails a little bit and let people contribute content locally at the local level. And I think you'll see that you're going to win more in the end as a result.
For sure. Yeah. So building off of that, just tapping into user generated content. So that could be
Hmm.
uh, sharing stories and moments from your community, whether it's events, resident stories, testimonials, and so much more. And you can also highlight subject matter experts in your community to create content, whether, like James said, blog posts, social media posts, or videos. And when I say
Yeah.
subject matter expert, that doesn't mean that they have to have 50,000 LinkedIn followers. It could be one of your chefs, an activity director, or a therapist, just sharing how they contribute to making your community unique and a great place to stay. So the last one I'll share for this one topic is to always stay strategic by maintaining boundaries. So in one of my prior roles, I was the only person on the marketing team. So you know that there was a healthy
Mm.
mix of ideas and initiatives that came my way, some great and some not so great. So I had to come to terms that it's okay to say no. So it's okay to know what your strategy is. In my case, everything marketing, and to know when it's okay to say no to a request, depending on the scope of the request and also my own bandwidth. So
That's
you
a
also don't
really
want to
good
get
point.
yourself overwhelmed with the amount of channels and networks that may not make sense for your brand. Do you have to have a TikTok to be successful in senior living? Chances are you might be doing fine without one. That doesn't mean you shouldn't try it out, but
Hmm.
don't overwhelm yourself with all of the options that are available that are all for accomplishing the same goal. It's okay to test them out, figure out what works, double down on what does, and scrap what doesn't. But it can be tough to, when there are dozens and dozens of options for sales enablement, marketing, fill in the blank, to pick the right ones. So James,
Hmm.
I'll toss it back to you to wrap this one up.
Yeah, I think that repurposing your content, being thoughtful about, I think the point that you made that I'll kind of bridge to is that you have to first know what your marketing message is. So we have a specific written down content marketing strategy. It's like a one sentence thing that explains this is why we do our content marketing and for what value. So it provides some clarity, it gives us an anchor. And when we teach that across our team, they can take that and just distribute it in their own kind of way.
Mhm.
But I would say that as a small business, we have to clearly define the parameters up front, and then we give the creative latitude for others to follow that. So really, really important point, Michael. That I'm glad you brought that up. Um, and the last quick example I'll give on this front about being scrappy. I've never seen a billboard before from one of my prior companies that I worked with. And a lot of people were a little hesitant about, oh, should we do a billboard for a new community? The thought is dump all of that money into Google Ads. Like that's where you need to go.
For sure.
But we thought really hard about that. And we put up a billboard, and all it says is love is greater than dementia, love greater than sign dementia. And then it has Bella Groves underneath it. No website, no phone number, no address. It doesn't say anything other than what I just shared with you. We've had more people reach out to us over that, vendors, partners in the area, families, people applying for work. This is what I mean about like when you know what your content strategy is, what your brand story is, and
Mhm.
you have some confidence in it, we bet on it. And fortunately, it's paying off for us. And it's kind of our calling card in the community. They're like, hey, I saw your billboard. I looked on your website. And sure enough, that customer journey is coming to fruition in that they follow through to it to talk to us. So take some risks. I think small businesses take risks.
Mhm.
And the irony is that larger businesses have the money and probably the resources to be able to take more risks than small businesses. But hey, I'm okay taking those risks if there's a little more glory towards our direction. But I think the message is sound here that clearly define your story, take some risks in the community, and double down on it when it feels right.
Love that. So, in our last few minutes here, we're going to land the plane with our fourth and final strategy. So, that one is to differentiate your community in every way possible by showcasing your resident experience. So, James, I'll let you kick this one off, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, so kind of continuing the thread of knowing what makes your communities or your company special. We know that one of the major differentiation points for us is our higher staffing ratio. So in our market, there's a 1 to 8, 1 to 10 caregiver to resident ratio. Ours is 1 to 4, and so we've built our entire business plan around this differentiation, and we've bet all in on that strategy. And so if we don't tell our customers about that, that would be very, very, very silly and foolhardy. So it's a part of what makes us special that we make sure that we're showcasing that to our families. And wouldn't you know it, when people come in and tour Bella Groves now, they see and feel the effect of that, and it's better than any billboard or brochure that I'm ever going to send to those customers. So know your strengths, know your story, and make damn sure that you're telling other people about it.
1000%. Well, I'll throw in a quick plug here for a great way to showcase resident experience. The best sales rep you have in my book is a happy resident. So what's the best way to put your residents front and center and really showcase what makes your community unique? I would say video. Video makes information more digestible and easier to understand. I mean, it really the continuous increase in sharing content on social media has really opened two big doors for businesses. One is organic social is a great way to reach your audience without a crazy amount of effort or money, and also has enabled video marketing to become more profitable. So people actually spend 88% more time on websites that have video. So not only does video accelerate the reach of your message, but it's also sticky, as in it's memorable. So here's a fun fact that we probably say in half of our webinars, but viewers retain 95% of a message when they watch it in a video compared to 10% when reading in a text. So lastly, it affects the bottom line when you're able to showcase your resident experience or even just using video throughout the sales process. So I'm dropping a link in the chat real quick with a case study that we just did with Jaybird Senior Living. We just wrapped it up a couple months ago, and where they were able to increase their occupancy by 4% and drive 3.35 million in annualized revenue through using video in their sales process. So I think the biggest way that you can really showcase your resident experience is just being out there on the floor, capturing footage and sharing it wherever you can, whether it's with potential residents or on your social media. That's one way that's really driven a lot of success for our partners. James, any thoughts you want to throw in there before we wrap everything up?
Yeah, so this is like when you watch a movie and the title of the movie shows up in the dialogue, you're like, ah, there it is. So it's the video kind of plug of this conversation, but I think it's a worthwhile plug because it's so relevant. Video, being able to connect with people through, like, imagine reading this webinar versus seeing Michael and I, talk about it. You feel an enthusiasm that you don't get through text. And then real quick, I'll toss in here. I understand the kind of moral kind of dilemma of, especially with what we do in dementia care, can people consent to being on video that they themselves may not, reap the benefits of that? Because social media, we reap the benefits of it because we're saying, I'm on it. So one of the ways that I do that with residents in dementia care, is that we may convey their story or an experience without them being on the video. So I've done that before, tell a resident story about a connection, and of course I give my own approval to be on video. But it's a way that you can still connect that heart to heart without that ambiguity of resident approvals. So the point being, get on video if you can, and our own website reflects that. We put a lot of video throughout it, and it's no coincidence that we have very, very high conversion ratios of our sales, even though we have very low inquiry numbers. So I think this is the time to take some risks and rewrite the script a little bit.
Definitely. Well, thank you, James. We're officially at half an hour, and that time just flew by. So,
James, I kind of 30 minutes. We got it.
I know we did it. So, James, thank you for taking the webinar stage with me today. I have so much respect for you and your innovative spirit and contributions to our industry. Thank you for being here. All right, y'all. Well, we're over time, but we'll open the floor for questions if you want to type them in. If not, I have let's see, one question here. James, are you able to share what was on the billboard, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I described it, so I'll post a photo of it, but it literally says "Love greater than dementia, Bella Groves."
Nice. There
Yep.
you go. So your message doesn't have to have a full bullet list of the amenities at your community. It can just be your brand message and your mantra there. So love
Yeah.
that. Well, awesome, y'all. I don't see any questions coming in, but rest assured this recording will be in your inbox this afternoon. Thank you, Mavis. Appreciate the words
Thanks,
there.
Mavis.
Hope y'all have a great rest of your day, and we're looking forward to the next webinar session we're doing. We're planning on doing one later in the fall, just covering on how you can really elevate your personal brand on LinkedIn. I know James has a lot of great tips there, and we have a couple of members on our team who can contribute there too. So stay tuned for that to be on the radar. So in the meantime, y'all have a great weekend and have a great month of June.
Here's the
Bye,
Michael peace
y'all.
sign.
Oh yeah, I got to do the classic peace sign. Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye.